In the Sumy region, soldiers of the 225th Separate Assault Regiment of the AFU managed to dislodge the Russians from the village of Andriivka in Sumy region. The fighting lasted for 2 weeks. They told Hromadsk about how they liberated the village. The village of Andriivka consists of 2 streets, quite a difficult terrain for infantry, a lot of greenery and a river which limits movement. The occupants were able to establish themselves there. They built fortifications and occupied the plantations around it. Andriivka itself is of strategic importance, as its capture would allow the Russians to move towards Sumy and shell the regional center with artillery. The soldiers of the 225th Assault Regiment were then ordered to clear one of the plantations. We entered Andriivka from the wheels, cut all approaches to the village and started mopping up, said Deputy Commander of the 225th OSHP, Alexander Klimenko. The troops moved in several waves, and the operation itself to liberate the village took 2 weeks. As Alexander Klimenko says, there was a coordinated work to cut their approaches and take everything under fire control. First, the drone operators worked to destroy the positions and equipment of the Russians, and then came the Ukrainian infantry. The Russians were frightened and began to retreat. What was memorable was that they took each other prisoner. The 177th Brigade, I think, if I'm not mistaken, took the 30th Battalion or Brigade prisoner. On their telegram channels, the Russians said, "We were the ones who killed everybody." Russian telegram channels said we killed the prisoners. We were filming from a drone, and at first we couldn't figure it out ourselves because one group was pixelated. Some of them lined up, but the others on the ground took a long time to sort it out. And when our drone flew to them, the ones who were prisoners were already killed. Then it turned out that they took each other prisoner, said Deputy Commander of the 225 OSHP, Alexander Klimenko. The soldier noted that the reasons for their inconsistency among themselves are not clear, but the AFU, from what happened, became pleasant. In the village of Kondratovka, in the Sumy region, the remnants of the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the Russian Armed Forces found themselves in a cauldron. The situation in this settlement is becoming catastrophic for the Russian military. The Russian Z Resource, Northern Channel, associated with the occupation forces, reports in detail about what is happening. According to him, the occupiers have lost positions on the northern outskirts of Kondratovka and are forced to retreat. Part of the group has been blocked in the central part of the settlement. The only corridor to exit to the east is under heavy fire from Ukrainian forces and is completely exposed to fire. The remains of the 30th Regiment are in the very center of Kondratovka. They are waiting for the blockade to be lifted. The channel's authors report. According to them, the so-called 9 was initially supposed to ensure the breakthrough of the encirclement, but this did not happen. The reason for the disrupted operation are not reported. Together with the 30th Regiment, the 40th Brigade of the Russian Federation also operated in the Kondratovka area earlier. However, according to the latest information, it suffered huge losses and is now recovering in neighboring Konstantinovka. Now, 2 battalions of the 810th Marine Brigade of the Russian Federation have been sent to try to unblock the encircled occupiers. But even the authors of the Z channel do not hide their despair. This has been going on in Kondratovka for a week now. Every day there are fewer and fewer of those we save, writes Severny Kanal. There is reason to believe that the Russian command is losing control of the situation on this section of the front. The offensive towards Sumy has finally stalled. Sumy region is one of the new hotspots of the war, where the Ukrainian armed forces continue to successfully contain and drive out the invaders. Kondratovka may become another point where the Kremlin's plans are destined to fail. part of the Russian elite, took Trump's new ultimatum seriously, as well as the US's readiness to begin new arms deliveries to Ukraine. They are confident that Putin may, in fact, be overestimating his capabilities. Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center researcher Tatiana Stanovaya said that the number of dissatisfied people in Russia continues to grow. The Washington Post reports. Some Kremlin officials believe there was a moment when Putin could have sat down at the negotiating table and stopped the war, but he did not do so because of stubbornness and irrationality. Many in Russia were confident that Putin and Trump would be able to reach an agreement, but in reality, nothing came of it. Russia's financial elite is concerned about the future of the economy, which is already suffering greatly from sanctions and the cost of the war. One Russian official said Putin wants to see things through to a victorious end. This is despite economists and businessmen urging him to be cautious. The Kremlin is confident of its victory since Russia is supported by the DPRK and China. At the same time, last week, the Levada Center conducted a sociological survey among the Russians. It showed that 64% are already in favor of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. However, Putin and his entourage do not seem to realize that discontent in the country is growing. What matters to the Kremlin now is how much more territory in Ukraine it can seize. Trump's ultimatum to Russia has sparked confusion and contradictory statements in Moscow. The Kremlin and the Russian Foreign Ministry have responded in disarray. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov was the first to admit that Trump's statement had shaken Moscow. According to him, the American president's statements should be taken as very serious, and the Kremlin would conduct a thorough analysis of them. We certainly need time to analyze what was said in Washington, and if and when President Putin deems it necessary, he will definitely comment on it. Peskov emphasized, not hiding the fact that some of Trump's threats were addressed personally to Putin. At the same time, the Russian Foreign Ministry brought to the forefront Lavrov's not very influential deputy minister, Sergei Ryabkov. He tried to sound threatening, but his rhetoric did not impress experts. Russia does not accept any attempts to make demands, especially ultimatums, Ryabkov said, adding that if the US and NATO do not take Moscow's position with the utmost seriousness, the war against Ukraine will continue. Against this backdrop, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, known for his aggressive statements, suddenly decided to play the role of indifferent observer. He called Trump's threats a theatrical ultimatum to which Russia allegedly remained indifferent. Apparently, the Russian leadership does not yet have a unified strategy or even a coordinated rhetoric in response to Trump's ultimatum.